In a lively neighborhood cafe with laughter and clinking cups filling the air, an unexpected flash of cruelty shattered the ordinary hum of conversation. Amid the warm glow of mid-afternoon light, a well-dressed black teenager named Marcus sat quietly at a corner table, sketching in his notebook and sipping iced tea. His eyes, full of creative spark and quiet determination, were focused on his drawing when suddenly the atmosphere shifted. From behind the counter strode Vanessa Cole, a middle-aged woman known for her sharp tongue and haughty manner. With a sneer curling her lips, Vanessa pointed at Marcus and barked, "You don't belong here." Before anyone could react, she stormed over, her eyes burning with unspoken contempt. In one swift, violent motion, Vanessa swung her arm and punched Marcus squarely across the face. The impact jolted the entire room. Conversation stopped, and a collective gasp swept through the patrons. Marcus's head jerked to the side, and his pencil dropped, scattering his carefully drawn sketches. His eyes widened in shock and pain as he struggled to comprehend what had just happened. In the background, a few startled onlookers fumbled with their phones, capturing the moment from different angles. Vanessa's voice rang out once again, harsh and cold. "Get out of my sight." Just as the tension reached its peak, an unexpected sound cut through the chaos. A clear, determined ring from a cell phone. In that split second, as the crowd's murmurs filled the air with questions and anger, something shifted. The phone call carried a weight that no one could yet understand. In those fleeting seconds, the energy in the cafe transformed from raw shock into an electrifying promise of retribution. Every eye turned toward the source of the call. Whispers spread. Who is that? What power could be in that voice? The unanswered questions hung in the air, setting the stage for a reversal that would upend everything Vanessa Cole believed. Unbeknownst to her, the voice on the other end of that call was about to reveal a secret so powerful that it would force her to confront her own prejudices in a way she never expected. In that moment, the promise of karma began to take shape. A promise that would not only alter Vanessa's world, but also redefine what it meant to wield authority. Before we go any further, subscribe to the channel and comment below where you are watching from. For our returning subscribers, thank you so much for your unwavering support. It truly means a lot to our community. The Café Mosaic was a beloved neighborhood spot known for its welcoming atmosphere and vibrant mix of patrons. Its exposed brick walls, colorful artwork, and warm lighting made it a refuge for students, artists, professionals, and families alike. On any given day, the cafe buzzed with lively conversations, soft music, and the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee. It was a place where everyone was meant to feel at home, a microcosm of the diverse community it served. At the heart of today's unfolding drama was Marcus Washington, a 16-year-old with a quiet passion for art. Marcus was known in the neighborhood for his remarkable talent. His sketches captured the soul of the city, and his gentle demeanor spoke of a maturity beyond his years. Clad in a simple t-shirt and jeans, he carried his worn notebook like a cherished treasure. His soft-spoken nature and steady eyes told a story of perseverance, a story that had earned him the admiration of many who frequented the cafe. Opposing Marcus, at least in that heated moment, was Vanessa Cole. Vanessa was a woman in her early 40s, with meticulously styled hair, a tailored blazer, and an air of self-importance that she flaunted without reserve. As a manager at a local upscale restaurant before her shift at Café Mosaic, she had built a reputation for being tough and unyielding, often to the point of cruelty. Her actions, fueled by a narrow and prejudiced view of who deserved respect, had long been a subject of hushed conversation among her colleagues. Vanessa believed that her high standards defined her, and anyone who did not meet them was unworthy of her time. The setting itself added layers to the unfolding story. Café Mosaic was more than just a place to grab a cup of coffee. It was a community hub where art and culture mingled with everyday life. The walls, adorned with local artwork, celebrated the city's rich diversity. Patrons of all ages and backgrounds shared their stories over steaming mugs, creating an atmosphere of camaraderie and mutual respect. On this particular day, however, the usual harmony was disrupted by a moment of unprovoked aggression that threatened to tear apart the very fabric of the community. Outside, the busy street pulsed with energy as passers-by, some on bicycles and others in cars, moved along with purpose. The cafe's large windows allowed natural light to flood the interior, casting a warm glow over the scene and highlighting the contrast between the vibrant, welcoming space and the dark act unfolding within it. The stage was set, a young artist with dreams and resilience, a bitter woman whose prejudices had blinded her to the value of every human being, and a community that had long cherished the ideals of inclusion and respect. Unbeknownst to Vanessa, a secret was hidden in plain sight, one that would soon upend the narrative of the day. The phone call that interrupted the chaos was not random. It was a call from someone who held a connection to Marcus that was far more significant than anyone could have imagined. In the days to come, the revelation of who his mother truly was would cause a dramatic shift in perspective, a twist that promised to challenge every preconceived notion Vanessa had about power, respect, and worth. In the immediate chaos following Vanessa's punch, the atmosphere in Cafe Mosaic was thick with shock and indignation. Customers scattered to find cover as murmurs of disbelief turned into a low roar of protest. The air buzzed with the sound of recording devices capturing every second of the incident. Marcus, despite the pain on his face, managed to sit down, his eyes searching the room for understanding as whispers of, "Why would she do that?" spread quickly. Vanessa, still fuming and unwilling to relinquish her narrow-minded stance, barked out explanations to anyone within earshot. "He was being disruptive," she shouted, attempting to justify her actions as enforcing the rules. But her words fell flat against the steady, calm voice of Marcus, who softly insisted, "I was just drawing." Her claims were contradicted by the clear and composed manner in which he had conducted himself all evening. As the initial shock subsided, the internal conflicts began to build. Several patrons, who had long admired the inclusive vibe of Cafe Mosaic, started discussing the incident openly. One older gentleman, a regular at the cafe, whispered to another, "I have seen her act this way before. It is not the first time Vanessa has looked down on someone because of their skin." His words, though spoken quietly, resonated with many who had quietly endured similar encounters. Within the cafe, the tension grew so palpable that even the background music seemed to drop to a hushed tone. Employees exchanged uneasy glances, and a few brave staff members recorded their own accounts of past grievances with Vanessa's behavior. Rumors of previous incidents began to surface, stories of other customers who had been treated harshly, their dignity trampled under the guise of upholding standards. Amid this growing chorus of dissent, the phone call that had cut through the chaos earlier began to circulate. A snippet of the call was shared widely online. A calm, authoritative voice demanding accountability for the discriminatory act. The voice hinted at a connection to Marcus that was more than just casual, a promise that soon the truth about his identity would be revealed. Every retweet and share added fuel to the fire, transforming a single act of aggression into a rallying point for justice and reform. As word spread beyond Cafe Mosaic, community leaders and local civil rights activists began to speak out. A well-known activist took to a makeshift stage outside the cafe, addressing the growing crowd with fiery passion. "This incident is not just about one rude act," he declared. "It is a symptom of a much deeper problem, a system that allows prejudice to flourish unchecked." His words struck a chord, and the crowd responded with cheers and chants, demanding that those responsible be held accountable. The internal investigation was launched swiftly. Management gathered statements from witnesses, and security camera footage was collected and reviewed. The evidence painted a grim picture. Multiple incidents of discriminatory behavior by Vanessa had been recorded over time, yet no decisive action had ever been taken. This discovery turned the focus of the investigation from a singular event to a pattern of systemic bias, intensifying the public's outcry. Amidst the chaos, Marcus maintained his composure. Despite the pain and humiliation he had suffered, he continued to speak with quiet clarity, assuring onlookers that he was not going to be silenced by this act of prejudice. His calm demeanor and measured tone in recounting his side of the story became a symbol of resilience, resonating with everyone who believed in fairness and equality. By the end of the day, the incident at Café Mosaic had evolved into a significant controversy. What began as a single act of racism had now become a battleground for justice, a symbol of the need to confront systemic discrimination head-on. The mounting evidence, the impassioned speeches, and the shared accounts of similar grievances all contributed to a growing demand. Something had to change, and it had to change now. In the days that followed the incident, the story of the racist outburst at Café Mosaic spread like wildfire across the city. Social media platforms exploded with outrage as videos and photos of the event were shared by hundreds of thousands of people. Hashtags such as hashtag Justice for Marcus and hashtag EndRacismNow trended nationwide, fueling a wave of public anger and calls for accountability. The incident quickly transformed from an isolated act of cruelty into a focal point of a broader movement against discrimination. Within Café Mosaic, the management found themselves under immense pressure to address the scandal. Linda Garcia, the owner of the cafe, held an emergency meeting with her senior staff. "We built this place on the values of respect and inclusion," she told her team, her voice steady despite the turmoil. "What happened today is unacceptable, and we must take immediate steps to ensure that every customer is treated with dignity." The meeting was intense, with employees recounting past experiences and expressing their disbelief that such an incident could occur in a space they had always considered safe. At the same time, local news outlets began to cover the story in depth. A respected journalist from a major newspaper interviewed several patrons, all of whom expressed shock and anger. "It is a disgrace that in this day and age, someone would behave so callously," one customer declared on camera. The journalist's report highlighted not only the incident itself, but also a pattern of complaints about Vanessa Thompson's behavior, complaints that had been dismissed by management until now. The public's response was immediate, and soon community leaders were calling for a full investigation into discriminatory practices at Café Mosaic. The internal investigation was launched with full force. Security camera footage was scrutinized, and witness statements were collected from every corner of the cafe. Digital records and past complaint files were reviewed, revealing a disturbing trend. Vanessa had repeatedly targeted customers based on their race, yet her behavior had gone unchecked. The investigation's findings were shared with senior management, and word of the damning evidence spread quickly through internal channels. As the investigation progressed, protests began to emerge outside the cafe. Crowds gathered, holding signs such as "Every Customer Matters" and "No More Racism," their chants echoing along the busy street. Local civil rights groups organized peaceful rallies, and community meetings were held where citizens demanded that those responsible be held accountable. The energy of these protests was palpable, a collective cry for justice that could not be silenced. In response to the mounting public pressure, Linda Garcia took to social media to address the situation. In a heartfelt post, she apologized for what had occurred and promised a complete internal review, assuring customers that such behavior would never be tolerated. Her message, though sincere, did little to calm the storm as more and more evidence emerged, pointing to a long-standing pattern of discrimination. The escalating tension within the cafe mirrored the growing discontent in the wider community. Employees began to speak openly about their own experiences of bias, and discussions about the need for cultural sensitivity training became more frequent. The internal atmosphere shifted from one of reluctant compliance to one of active demand for change. "We cannot allow this to continue," one young employee said in a hushed tone during a break. "It is time for our voices to be heard and for real accountability to be enforced." Meanwhile, community leaders and local politicians began to weigh in. In a televised town hall meeting, a well-known council member declared, "This incident is a wake-up call. We must re-examine our policies and ensure that every act of discrimination is met with swift, decisive action. His words were echoed by numerous activists and pundits, and the pressure on the cafe's management grew unbearable. The internal investigation, now bolstered by digital logs, leaked emails, and security footage, painted an irrefutable picture of Vanessa Thompson's misconduct. Every new piece of evidence further confirmed that the incident was not an isolated mistake, but part of a broader, systemic problem. The public's anger was no longer just about a single act. It was about years of neglect and the failure of institutions to protect the dignity of every individual. By the time the investigation reached its peak, the tension was so high that every stakeholder in the community felt that a dramatic change was imminent. The stage was set for a turning point, a moment when the accumulated weight of evidence and public demand would force the hand of those in power, and when the true cost of discrimination would finally be paid. The decisive moment came on a brisk afternoon in a packed conference room at the headquarters of Central City's hospitality group, which managed Café Mosaic. The room was filled with senior executives, legal advisors, community representatives, and local media, all gathered to witness the final resolution of the internal investigation. With an air of calm determination, senior manager Carlo Ortiz stepped up to the podium. After an exhaustive review of all the evidence, digital logs, security footage, and numerous eyewitness testimonies, it is clear that flight attendant Vanessa Thompson's actions were driven solely by personal bias. Ortiz began, her voice steady and resolute. Her refusal to serve Mr. Darius Lewis and the subsequent physical assault on our valued customer are completely unacceptable and betray the very values we hold dear. A heavy silence fell over the room as her words reverberated among those gathered. Ortiz continued, "Effective immediately, Vanessa Thompson is suspended from duty pending a full disciplinary review. This decision is not just about punishing one individual. It is a bold statement that discrimination in any form will no longer be tolerated in our community." The declaration sent shockwaves through the assembly, and every eye turned toward Vanessa, whose confident facade had crumbled into one of shock and regret. At that pivotal moment, a calm voice from the back of the room rose in support. Darius Lewis, the man who had endured the humiliation with quiet dignity, stood up. His expression was serene yet determined as he addressed the assembly. "I have always believed that respect is not a privilege. It is a right. Today, I stand not as a victim, but as a testament to the strength that comes from holding true to one's dignity. Let this be the turning point that inspires change, where every act of prejudice is met with accountability." His words resonated powerfully with everyone present, and the room filled with a surge of applause and nods of approval. Inspector David Ramirez then stepped forward to present the final damning dossier. The comprehensive collection of evidence included internal emails, security footage that clearly captured Vanessa's discriminatory actions, and a series of customer complaints that spanned several months. With each piece of evidence laid bare, it became undeniable that her actions were not isolated, but part of a recurring pattern of bias. The Internal Affairs Panel, now unanimous in its decision, confirmed that the evidence left no room for doubt. The turning point was complete. The power dynamics shifted irreversibly as the public and internal voices of dissent converged to deliver a resounding verdict. No one, regardless of their position or tenure, was above the law. The decision to suspend Vanessa Thompson was more than a disciplinary measure. It was a declaration that the values of respect, dignity, and fairness would prevail over prejudice. The shock on Vanessa's face, captured by every camera in the room, became a lasting symbol of that moment when karma had indeed hit hard and when the truth finally demanded its due. For Darius Lewis, for every customer who had suffered injustice, and for a community that had long yearned for accountability, this moment marked the beginning of a new era. The collective determination in the room promised that the system would change, and that discrimination, once allowed to flourish unchecked, would now be met with swift and decisive consequences. In the weeks following the dramatic verdict, the reverberations of that fateful day spread throughout Central City. News of Vanessa Thompson's suspension and the comprehensive internal investigation became a focal point of public discourse. Local media heralded the decision as a turning point in the battle against discrimination in customer service, and social media exploded with messages of support for Darius Lewis and calls for broader institutional reform. Darius, whose quiet strength had shone through in the face of humiliation, emerged as an unexpected hero. In the days that followed, he attended community forums and spoke at local events about the importance of standing up against injustice and the power of dignity in adversity. His calm, yet determined voice resonated deeply with many who had long suffered from biased treatment. Darius's experience became a rallying cry for change, a symbol that even in the most challenging moments, integrity and respect could prevail. At Central Brew, the management, led by Senior Manager Carlo Ortiz and Lieutenant Marcus Daniels, wasted no time in implementing sweeping reforms. New training programs on cultural sensitivity, ethical conduct, and unbiased service were introduced across the organization. Policies were overhauled, and strict oversight mechanisms were established to ensure that every complaint of discrimination would be thoroughly investigated. Ortiz made it clear that these measures were not merely reactive, but a proactive commitment to rebuilding trust and ensuring that every customer was treated with the dignity they deserved. The internal investigation into Vanessa Thompson's conduct, now widely reported in local news and discussed at public forums, served as a catalyst for a broader industry-wide conversation about accountability in customer service. Other establishments began to review their own policies, and civil rights groups used the incident as a benchmark for demanding systemic change. The once hidden pattern of bias was now a public issue, and the message was clear: discrimination in any form would no longer be tolerated. Public sentiment was united in its support for the reform efforts. Town hall meetings and community gatherings brought together citizens, business owners, and local officials to discuss ways to ensure that every establishment embraced fairness and inclusivity. Banners with slogans like "Every customer matters" and "No room for racism" were hoisted, and local politicians pledged to champion policies that protected the rights of every individual. The collective determination was palpable, a community no longer willing to remain silent in the face of injustice. In one final public rally held in the plaza outside City Hall, Lieutenant Marcus Daniels addressed the assembled crowd. "Today, we have taken a powerful stand for justice," he declared. "Let the events of that day remind us that every act of discrimination will be met with accountability, and that together we can build a future where respect, fairness, and unity are the cornerstones of our community." His words were met with resounding applause, sealing the promise of lasting change. As Central City slowly returned to its daily rhythm, the legacy of that day endured. The painful experience that had shocked the community had sparked a movement for reform and a reminder that every individual, regardless of background, deserved to be treated with dignity. Darius Lewis's quiet courage and the resolute actions of the management had set the stage for a new era in customer service, one where respect would no longer be optional. In the end, the story of that fateful day became a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of accountability and the unwavering belief that even the most deeply ingrained prejudices can be overcome when faced with truth. Central City, along with its businesses and communities, emerged stronger, united by the shared commitment to a fair and just future where every voice was heard and every individual was respected.